welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin, and this is a custom video for Cliff. Now, we've seen Cliff before. I made a couple of custom videos about his two vintage Rolex watches, and I'll put the links to those videos in the description of this video. You can check them out. But when I made those videos, I thought he was working with two vintage Rolex watches only, but it turns out he's got other pieces, and we're going to take a look at some of those pieces. And he's also narrowed it down to what he wants to get, a couple of choices that are either vintage or neo-vintage, sort of right on the line. They're 5-digit Rolexes, but they have acrylic crystal, but we'll get into them. So Cliff's email, he writes, "Hi Austin, thank you. Your last video regarding my 5500 Air King / Explorer and 1803 day date were fantastic. I really enjoyed them and appreciate everyone, including yourself, for your valuable advice. I'm actually a sucker for mostly vintage watches, as I believe they are timeless in style and that the dedication to craftsmanship just cannot be easily duplicated today. However, that's not to say there aren't amazing modern watches out there. Over the years, I've collected and let go a few pieces of vintage and modern. Here are some of the watches in my collection now. I'm hoping if you could review them and maybe advise on what I should get rid of and what I should keep to chase my next piece. You are right, I think, that I should chase after some Rolex neo-vintage pieces. And I said that because I thought, again, he was working just with these two vintage Rolex watches. I thought he needed something a little bit more wearable, something he could put in water. I think I put it like that. But he liked the vintage aesthetic. So I was thinking 5-digit, pre-ceramic, sapphire crystal Rolex watches. Because below you will see that I actually own a modern ceramic GMT Master 2, and that's the 116710L, and that was another watch that I recommended if you wanted to go real modern, and he's already got that. As I've been trying to track down, perhaps, and here are the two watches he's thinking of going for, a two-tone Submariner from my birth year, 1984, or a GMT Master with a nipple dial. And so that would be the two-tone GMT, and we'll talk about both of those. He says, any guidance would be greatly appreciated. All right, so he wants a 1984 model because it's a birth year model, and that's interesting. Birth year watches are cool. I like the idea of that. I've thought about getting one for myself. It's tough to nail down exactly when your watch was made, okay? It's more of a range than anything, and depending on the source, you're gonna get different dates. I know here in Japan, it's like a year early or later compared to a lot of the sources that us Westerners use. I would be okay with going the year I was born or earlier. In fact, a little earlier, just to be safe, would be kind of nice. I like the idea that this watch was kicking around when I was still itching my daddy's pants, as they put it. So 1984 or prior would be good enough for me, but if he wants 1984, according to at least Bob's Watches, that would be a serial number starting 8,070,022. I mean, he's narrowed it down to 22. That's pretty crazy. So I guess 8,070,021 would be 1983. Okay, well, I don't know if you can really get that accurate, but it goes all the way up until it switches to 1985, and it switches to 1985 for the 8,614,000. And so that number or later would be 1985. Again, it's a range, okay? But you would probably, want about 8,100,000 to, 8,600,000. Okay, it's easier to remember like that. That would be 1984, okay? And he's talking about a two-tone Submariner. That would be the model 16803, all right? And it was actually the first two-tone Submariner. Acrylic crystal, ran for just 3 or 4 years until, I want to say, 1988. They probably were still selling them in 1989 when the 16610 the all steel, and the 16613 two-tone came out, and those ran for like 20 years. All right, so this is a real transitional model, just made for a couple of years. Still, they have them here. Some notable points on all of the watches we're going to talk about from that period. They'll have open 6s and open 9s. Okay, so Cliff lives in China, and he's been to Japan. He's bought a couple of watches here in Japan, and looking on Rakuten, I could find 6 16803s, 3 bluesies, and 3 black dial 16803s. All right, and the bluesies I think are a little bit more expensive, but it really depends on condition, whether you got box and papers. Here they are. You can see they start at 1,120,000 yen and go all the way up to the most expensive, which is a bluesy for 1,630,000 yen. You can do your own currency conversion because it changes and everybody's going to have a different one. Now, a few notable watches here. The first one is no box, no papers. It's the cheapest. It's a bluesy. You can always go that route. But for 1,230,000, you've got this 1984. And by the way, some of these are not going to be his birth year, but this one for 1,230,000 yen, it's a black dial version, 1984. It's the second cheapest. It's box, papers, looks like a really good example, clean movement. These are going to be tritium watches and acrylic crystal watches, and the tritium looks good and the hands seem to be tritium. This seems to be a great price and a great piece, but if you want bluesy and you want box and papers, you're gonna have to spend more, about $4,000 more. And for a beautiful bluesy, it might be worth it. And that's number 6. It's the most expensive. It's from 1986 though. That's the thing. It's not a birth year watch. Box, papers, 1,630,000 yen. Beautiful. For me, for my money, it's tough because the bluesy is beautiful, but if you're okay with the black dial, then you got your birth year watch here. Seems to be a very good price, competitive price. Box, papers, good example. It's your birth year. Everything checks off. This is a tough watch to find in the configuration you want it because, first of all, they only made it for, 3 or 4 years, and you're looking for just one specific year, and finding one with box and papers is going to be tough. That's also a clean example. So this could be one you might want to think about. Or if you want to splash out for the bluesy, that's another one. All right. Now we can talk now about the GMT. And so that would be with the nipple dial, the two-tone, the 16753. All right. It ran, pretty sure, concurrently with the steel version, the 16750, which ran from 81 to 88. Not a lot of 16750s, the steel version, out there, so the two-tone is going to be even harder to find, and I couldn't even find it on Rakuten. I think you can find it on Chrono 24, but again, acrylic crystal, just like the Sub, and it's going to have the open 6s, open 9s. The stacking order is going to be local hour hand, GMT, minute, and second. And when you're talking a 16750, that would be a big deal because it was different. Let me just say the 16750 GMT was the lowest one, was the GMT hand, the local, the minute, and the second. And so if you're looking for a 1675, that's something you want to make sure, because you don't want it to be a Franken and them to put a later movement. But probably nobody's going to be putting an earlier movement in your 16750. 16753. The 16750 is the steel version. Okay, and so, okay, all right, going down rabbit holes left and right here. Let's dig ourselves out. All right, the 16753 comes on a Jubilee bracelet, came on a Jubilee bracelet, or an oyster bracelet. Again, acrylic crystal. Nipple dial, that's going to be tough to find. 1984, so it's going to have that, what, 8,100,000 to 8,600,000. Good luck. That's going to be a tough one to find for a lot of reasons, because you want the nipple dial, you want the two-tone, you want it just from that year, and likely you're going to want a good example. And could you find sort of a sketchy example with Luminova hands? Probably. This is going to be tougher, so it's probably going to be easier to find that sub, and I think I found a great sub for you. But he didn't actually say two-tone, okay? And I have seen solid gold GMTs. They did have on Rakuten a 16758 solid yellow gold GMT, beautiful, brown dial, brown bezel, Jubilee bracelet. I don't think it had box and papers. That's a lot of watch. I think for my money, I probably would look to that 1984 black dial 16803 sub. And again, if you wanted to pay $4,000 more to get that bluesy, that'd be fine, but that's a 1986 model, so it's not going to be a birth year model. All right, guys, let Cliff know what you think. What would you go for? For me, I think that 1984 black sub, I think that is a great piece. Checks off all the boxes, unless you wanted a bluesy, and it's very affordable. Vintage subs, depending on the vintage sub you're talking about, but those sort of transitional subs are a lot cheaper than the transitional GMTs. Just GMTs tend to be more expensive all around. Maybe they made less, maybe they made more subs. I don't know why, all right, but 16750s, 16760s, fat ladies. I mean, there's all, when you're talking box and papers, oh, they're like, 30 grand, whereas a box and papers 16803, not that expensive, but again, it's two-tone, all right? Anyway, thank you, Cliff. We'll continue this in video 2 and take a look at your current pieces. Guys, drop a comment in the comment section. Give Cliff a bit of advice. Help him out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you in part 2. Take care.